If you want to see your name at the beginning of all of our videos, as well as see exclusive content here on the homestead, please feel free to join our Patreon. Memberships start off at just $1 a month. And as always, thank you for your support. It is another cold morning on the homestead. And when we have back and forth weather like this, where it goes from hot, cold, I really worry about our grow outs and our very young rabbits who maybe don't have an adult coat in yet, or their coat just hasn't finished yet. And sometimes that can be problematic when it comes to this ever-changing weather. So we've talked about it before, where if you find a cold kit in the nest box, it's not dead until it's warm and dead. The same is also true about a grow out or even an adult rabbit. If you find them cold and either not moving or barely moving, throw them in your jacket, get them inside. And this isn't something we normally see with adult rabbits, but it does happen in some breeds that maybe aren't as cold resilient. Now, this is coming from a standpoint of rabbits do better in the cold than the heat, but sometimes there are just breeds that don't do well in the cold. For instance, if we get super cold, my silver fox here will still do just fine, but I do start worrying about our Rex rabbits, just because they're a more delicate breed in comparison, especially the minis. The minis sometimes I have issues with if it gets too cold, in that we do up their feed to keep them in good condition. I haven't had a big scare yet with an adult rabbit in this case, but I do know friends who live in colder places than I do that have. So it is something to keep in mind if you do live in colder climates. I've heard that Lop breeds don't do well in the cold because of their ears, so that's something to keep in consideration. But also keep in mind in the winter, it's better to be over-conditioned and kind of fat than under-conditioned. But yeah, that's kind of my morning rambling as I'm out here in the barn. I gotta top off waters, and then once the baby's down for her nap, I gotta get some cleaning and corners done and lay down some fresh wood pellets. It's cage wipe down day, so today I'm just doing hot water and white vinegar, because although it is warm enough to where the water's not going to freeze on contact, I'm still worried about the water evaporating before it freezes, and that means that the rabbits could potentially eat the little ice puckers. So white vinegar is not going to hurt them, and we can still get the cages disinfected. As long as it's above 20 degrees, I don't mind doing this, but any lower than that, then I worry about the barn turning into a giant icicle. So I'm going to do the cages, the walls, and the stands, and just try to get this done as fast as possible so that we can get some more sanitation in here, because it's been getting dusty. So we got Nina bred today, which we're super excited for. But if you were hoping for a Zeus pairing, then I am sorry to disappoint you. So this is Zeus. He is my blue silver fox buck. This was the buck we were hoping to breed her with, but he is also a virgin buck. So he doesn't really know what he's doing because he's still just a bit of a baby. And Nina, in good old Nina fashion, was very ready to breed, and he wasn't moving fast enough, and she tried to breed his head, and it spooked him a little bit. So Zeus is going to try again a different month when he's a little more ready, because he is just the softest, sweetest boy. And we threw Nina in with Wiley, who was more than happy to accommodate her in the process. He got 3 good fall-offs in just as many minutes. So I am very excited to see how this pairing goes, especially with how good of a type Wiley has compared to Nina, and the addition of Nina's fur. So hopefully within the next 30 to 33 days, we will have a nice litter out of these 2 monsters. Your questions are always just like spot on, and I love them. Please never stop. But when it comes to breeding, it just depends on the pairing. The better the parents are, the better the offspring are going to be, and the less likely you're going to have what I lovingly call trash litters, and that every single rabbit is a dud. With that being said, if you have what I like to call parts rabbits, meaning you're trying to piece together the best parts of a rabbit, there's a chance that you're going to get some bad things. So if I were to pair Zeus and Nina, I really wouldn't worry about them ever being a trash litter,
because both rabbits have amazing qualities. Now, there is always the chance that the lines wouldn't mesh, which does happen sometimes, but it's less likely. Now, my pairing with Wiley and Nina could be disastrous. I could get none of the good parts of Wiley and none of the good parts of Nina, and they could mesh to be a very crappy litter. Type-wise, though, they're going to be great. It's just the hair I'm worried about in this. But the opposite is also true. Sometimes I will have a bad rabbit here like Alpha, which I love his fur and his color. That's the best parts about these rabbits, but overall he's just a little long and flat. But I breed him to a couple of good rabbits, and sometimes he gives me the best of him and the best of the doe, which is where Queen comes in. She is the best of her mother and father. She's still not great because this line just overall isn't the best, but she is the best I could ask for out of that pairing. So she'll go on to the next generation until I can improve on this line. So to answer your question just real quick, it's always a mixed bag, but the better quality mom and dad are, the less likely you'll get bad pieces. Which is why you'll hear me preach to get what you can afford at the highest quality. It's less work for you in the long run.
So we make sure that our rabbits are both age appropriate depending on their breed and size. For our silver foxes, that means we normally breed somewhere around 9 months old. And then we actually breed more in the winter than in the summer because it's easier on the moms and babies in the winter than the summer. This is our most recent litter of silver fox kits. These guys are about 4 days old now, I do believe. And this is the litter out of Vanessa and Lalo. But as long as mom is a good nest builder, then we normally don't have any kind of problems during the winter.
So will I rebreed the pairing from my previous video? The answer to that is no, because I've already gotten what I've wanted out of that pairing, and I'll be replacing the doe with this beauty. The only reason I got the trio that I did was that I wanted to start getting into Chinchilla Rex, which is this color right here with Queen, and I was waiting for a decently shaped doe to move further into my program. With that said, I still want another chinchilla doe out of this doe right here, so I'll be playing with Alpha, trying to get a pairing out of them, and then I'll probably completely remove Alpha from my breeding program. Alpha as a buck should be pretty easy to replace, and this is one of his sons I have been eyeballing, who I might keep depending on his grow out. So even Alpha can be replaced. My big goal for my Rex right now is to just get chinchillas to a showable status. It would be easier to do so if I could find some Rex that carried chinchilla or were chinchilla of a good quality, but unfortunately I haven't been able to find anything recently. But that's okay because I mostly use my Rex for meat anyway, and then every once in a while I'll take them to show. They're my fun project more than they are my serious project, like with my Silver Fox and my Mini Rex. So let's talk about genetics when it comes to off-colored markings. There's something called the random white spot gene, where you will on a rabbit have random white spots that pop up. This is Vanessa and her daughter Mercury. They're just random white spots that pop up into your lines and can perpetuate down through a line, but there's not really much else behind them. Then, beyond the random white spot gene, we have the Vienna gene. And I'm using Penguin as an example. Her mother was a blue-eyed white, so therefore she is a Vienna carrier. In order to get a blue-eyed white, you need 2 Vienna carriers. The Vienna gene will show up as random white marks on your rabbit. For instance, Daisy, who is in our house, has a white stripe on her forehead and a dot on her nose because of the Vienna gene. So the biggest difference between the Vienna gene and the random white spot gene is that if you breed 2 Vienna carriers with Vienna marks together, you'll get blue-eyed white babies. But if you breed 2 rabbits that have a random white spot gene, they just might produce more random white spots through the lines. Both are very annoying little genetic qualities that a lot of people cull for. I might cull for random white spots, but I don't cull for the Vienna gene because I do have blue-eyed whites in my Mini Rex program. Eventually, with my Silver Fox, I'll focus more on culling out the random white spots, but right now I'm more focused on type and fur than color. Now, nose markings on broken animals. A lot of people will cull for nose markings just when it comes to show, because you can't show an animal with no nose markings. And it can be a reduction of points for a nose marking that isn't balanced. So they would cull for one that only has one on the side of its face instead of on both sides. But in my lines personally, if I have an animal that has no nose marking or half a nose marking, I cull it. Because I've noticed in my lines that perpetuates down through the line. And I honestly just don't want that. Other things that are culled for in a line when it comes to color is mismatched toenails and eyes to the standard of perfection, and incorrect lacing on the ears when it comes to things like otters and castors. I've also seen people with otter lines cull if the markings on the feet aren't correct. So there's all kinds of really weird color things that people cull for in their rabbit lines. And as I had some friends point out in a previous video, there are some pattern breeds where they get even worse about culling for certain color and line traits. As we get colder and colder into the season, we want to make sure that our rabbits are keeping condition and that we don't need to add feed. Because maintenance for a rabbit in the winter versus the summer can very drastically change. And this can also depend on your breed. A Rex will not do as well as a Silver Fox in extremely cold temperatures. So the question is, what do we look for when it comes to rabbits being too cold and losing condition? When we go over our rabbits, we want to make sure that they're firm of flesh and that we can't feel any extra bones or pin bones along the back and the hips. It's also important to keep in mind that during the winter, it's better to be over-conditioned than under-conditioned. Your rabbit should not be shivering, nor should it have any kind of cold injuries. If your rabbits have dewlaps or long ears, you want to modify your water system so that they're not dragging those areas through the water and having them freeze later. If you do notice a loss of condition when it comes to your rabbits, there's quite a few things that you can do. You can add extra feed to start. A rabbit that might be kept at 10 ounces during the summer might need to be moved up to 15 ounces of feed during the winter. There's also the question of supplementation such as Boss or calf manna. I also have a friend on here that does hot mash over at Breeze Bunny Barn. Y'all should go give her a shout out for me. And then I have other friends who add various supplements to feed to help through the winter. With that being said, any supplements should be slowly added as you watch to make sure your rabbit can handle it so that it doesn't get things like GI stasis or bloat. And again, these are just things that we talk about as a precaution, especially when you consider that rabbits do better in the winter compared to the summer in most cases. I'm not really worried about these guys. My Silver Fox are great. I'm worried about these guys, and my young Mini Rex. I answered you in the comments, but I think this is an excellent question just to talk about. If you have a mom that isn't pulling fur or isn't building an appropriate nest for her babies, there's quite a few things you could do. You did exactly what I do most of the time, in that I will pull the fur for her. So mamas will normally pull hair from their dewlap area right here and down on the chest. And you just grip it and pull it. I'm not going to do that to poor Nina right here because she doesn't have a nest or a litter, but that's kind of what I would do. And then there's the option of extra nesting materials. Some people will keep spare fur from other nests that are being built. Cotton balls are also an amazing option when it comes to building a nest for your rabbit if she doesn't pull enough hair. You just kind of pull the cotton away from the ball and make it fluffier. So we're currently sitting at about 0 degrees Fahrenheit, which is about 32 degrees below freezing. And we'll easily get down into the negatives tonight. And I have absolutely zero worries about these kits, just because mom builds a great nest and they are doing fantastic. They have nice full bellies and they're growing at the right rate. And we don't have a temperature controlled barn, although I wish we did. We just have your basic half barrel barn without insulation. Basically, it just keeps out the wind and the wet. And that's all we really need for this breed. They're extremely cold weather tolerant and hardy. If y'all haven't been following me for very long, these are Silver Fox kits. There's Mom in the corner pouting because I only gave her the smallest amount of oats. But with a really experienced mom, you just gotta trust the process and that she goes through to keep the babies alive. Now, if you are really worried about temperature, there is always the option of shelving kits. Basically, if I would want to shelf this litter, I'd just take this entire nest box and put it in my office in the house or in the garage, depending on how much of a temperature shift I'm expecting to see within the next couple of days. To be honest, I'd probably do the garage over my office just because I wouldn't want to keep them in 70-degree weather for it to drop into the negatives during the day. But overall, I'm more comfortable in the winter than I am the summer with baby kits. Because we can always add to this nest. We can always add more nesting material. The mom will always add more fur. We will keep up with how warm this is with the number of kits there are. But in the summer, if I'm worried about heat stroke, even if these kits are spread apart, they can easily overheat and cook themselves. And it's easier to warm up a dead kit than to cool down a dead kit, if that makes sense. But either way, I'm extremely excited about this litter out of Lalo and Vanessa. They are absolutely stunning. And look at that nice full chunky belly right there. Vanessa is such a good mom. But I'm going to get the hair covered back over these guys so that they stay nice and warm tonight. And I'm going to head in because it is really chilly. But that's all that really needs done before leaving them for the night.